I asked my members to give me some of the hottest Jujutsu Kaisen takes they had or had heard around the modern day cesspool that is the internet. And here's 14 of them ranked worst to best. First take. Inumaki should have been in the Culling Games for two reasons. A, to grow his character and personality, and B, skill set and fighting style. This one I thought was interesting because there's honestly so many different things that the Culling game could have went into. And this goes into another hot take that I had, which was the pacing of Jujutsu Kaisen is too fast because series like Bleach were very long. Imagine if Bleach was one and done and we fought Aizen, the main villain of the series, in the first arc, and then that was it and moved on, as opposed to having a 300 to 400 chapter spanning story. And then you have to imagine that there's just things on both sides, right? There's things on both sides. You have the option that people are gonna get freaking bored of all these side characters fighting that realistically have no honest bearing on the actual story. What was Inumaki doing in the Culling Games that was going to really be plot defining and change how things happened in the Shinjuku Showdown, the next arc of the Culling game? To really press, sure, it would have been awesome to see Inumaki do a quick little 2-chapter fight in some random colony with some random sorcerer. But at the same time, people were already mad at Megami having his fight with Reggie, saying that Megami's fight had no sauce, and people said Megami's fight was taking too long and there was nothing to do and it was boring. And Megami's one of the main characters of the series. People didn't like Maki's Sakurajima colony chapters. I really wasn't even the biggest fan of the Sakurajima chapters. Now, I'm obviously of the variety of let Gege cook, let Gege do what he wants. I'm going to follow Jujutsu Kaisen until the end of the story just to see what Gege's doing. But we have to remember, like, as much as someone like me, and now I bring that back to Bleach, that's the same problem that everyone had with Bleach. Fake Karakura Town arc specifically, without spoiling anything. There's a significant segment of Bleach where it's like the midpoint of the main villain's storyline, where it's literally almost over 100 to 150 chapters of just side characters fighting other side villain characters. And sure, it's cool to see all of those characters have their shine, have their moment, but at the same time, the plot does not move for years because of that. You have 150 chapters, which could translate to 2 to 3 years of Bleach just being in a stun lock of an arc because we've just went through 20, 30 chapters of 4 to 5 side characters fighting each other. None of these characters are main characters, and at the end of the day, it's the subordinates fighting the subordinates while we're waiting for the actual main fight between the actual powerhouses to begin, and we keep cutting back from the main fights to watch other side characters fight. And it's awesome that every character gets their due. If you want to have a strong cast like that and have everyone have their moment, looking back on it, I love Bleach. Bleach is one of my favorite series of all time. I'm glad that there's all those cool fights, but it makes it significantly harder on a rewatch or a reread to be like, wow, none of this shit matters. I don't care about this. I want to get to the plot moving. And for a series that literally has one of the biggest complaints be, especially right now, that the plot, nothing has happened in the plot. As much as Inumaki, I would love for him to be in the Culling game, for him to grow his character, him to have maybe something better than just being a cursed speech merchant and being Yuta's son, as everyone said. Like, you know, it's just rough. Where do we rank this? I mean, it's kind of lukewarm. I mean, most people are going to complain that the side characters don't get enough. Even if binding vows make sense, their lack of consequences hurt the power system of cursed energy. It makes for less compelling fights and could also hurt the world building, as the power system usually forms part of the world of the series. And also, I have a follow-up one as well to follow up on that take. Binding vows may have been inspired from Nen restrictions, but they are not the same. Nen restrictions have actual consequences. Compare Gon and Kurapika's restrictions to Todo and Sukuna's vows. Jujutsu is all about trickery. So by setting conditions that limit you in one aspect to gain an advantage in another aspect, you're not really limiting yourself if you do it correctly. The same rule doesn't apply to Nen restrictions, or at the very least, regarding Nen restrictions, the loss to gain ratio is much more serious. The only example I can think of where restrictions exist between others are Hisoka and Illumi. Other than that, Nen restrictions are capable only of being performed with oneself. In contrast, JJK allows you to make binding vows with anything, and if you're Sukuna, you will almost certainly gain from it. Binding vows have always been interesting. I think overall, the problem with people most likely have is that binding vows have been abused much more now than they ever have been. But I also could see an argument being made that characters like Sukuna, characters like Gojo, even characters like Hikari are so much more advanced in a level of Jujutsu sorcery that like the correct amount of equivalent exchange is probably somewhat hard to justify, right? Like I know a lot of people are like, okay, well, why doesn't this person just use a binding vow to do this and win this? And why aren't we just seeing binding vows flying around like hotcakes? Which I could see as like a reasonable argument. But you also have to remember how much quick wit, how much understanding of your own cursed energy capacity, how much understanding of your own ability, what is possible, what isn't possible, is required in order to use a binding vow, especially on the fly, right? Like it was a pretty big deal when Hikari used a binding vow to save himself and not die from Kashimo's big nuke, lightning explosion, right? Like Hikari had to give up an arm and lose the ability to use domain expansion in order to survive the entire attack. Whereas we have characters like Sukuna, whose binding vow is, I can only use Malevolent Shrine for 99 seconds, thus my domain expansion is super strong and I can kill everyone. They seem more bullshit, or they seem more plot armory because of the fact that Sukuna is just kind of making them on the fly randomly, right? Sukuna is just kind of like, it's just boom. Sukuna, how did Sukuna do something like this? Oh, I used a binding vow. How did Sukuna do something like this? Oh, I used a binding vow. It does kind of seem like a MacGuffin device, for sure. I would consider that kind of lukewarm. I think a lot of people have problems with binding vows. I think that's pretty, I don't think that's very out of left field to say. I think I can understand why people would think that. Up next, Megumi having so much potential only to lose it all to Sukuna was an excellent decision, because Sukuna is a much more compelling character than Megumi ever was. That's honestly crazy to say that. That's insane. As much as Megumi is potential, man, as much as Megumi gets shit on, and as much as Megumi is the reason for all of our problems, I don't think he's a bad character. I think Megumi is a great character. I love Megumi. I think he's got a really cool arc. I think he's got a cool character. I think there are a lot of good traits that Megumi has. I love his dynamic with Yuji. Megumi's a great character. I can't give you spicy hot because I don't think the take is agreeable. But I will say, whew, that was a hot take. That was a hot take in general, to say that Sukuna is a more compelling character. Of all people too, Sukuna, listen, I thought Kenjaku was, my hot take, I thought Kenjaku was a better, more deserving main villain than Sukuna was, in my honest opinion. I felt like Kenjaku moved the plot along. Sukuna is a great villain. Sukuna is a great powerhouse. Sukuna has great villain moments. Does Sukuna move the plot along? He doesn't. I wouldn't call Sukuna a compelling character, at least not more than Megumi. So that's a hot take for sure. Definitely a hot take, but I don't think I can overall agree with that point. Ryu Ishiguro was one of the coolest characters introduced in terms of personality, and yet he was completely wasted as a character. Him fighting Sukuna out of seemingly nowhere was unnecessary, and he got wiped with little to no difficulty. Yet Yuji and Maki were fighting on a decent scale. I definitely think Ishigori's stronger than them. But even still, imagine if we got to see him fight alongside Yuji after Yuta got cut and he used his domain. Would have been a really cool way to introduce it. I think that's like a mild take. I don't think that's too spicy. I don't think that temperature is too hot, but it's definitely like a mild take for sure. I mean, listen, Ishigori was indeed a cool character. No one's denying you there. Ishigori definitely hit the cool factors for me. Never thought a character with the pompadour would you know, move me, but he did indeed move me, especially now that he's had more time to grow on me as a character. I definitely think Ishigori was really cool. I would say that he was taken out of the story so he couldn't be an ally for us later. As far as like he died to 15 Finger Sukuna for seemingly no reason, maybe it was more of like a power scaling tactic. It was still to show us how far above 15 Finger Sukuna is to the reincarnated sorcerers. I could also see that as an option as to why Ishigori got taken out, was to be like, hey, 15 Finger Sukuna is still 10 times stronger than all of the people that we just faced. But yeah, I think that's a mild take for sure. I think that's a pretty mild take. Ishigori's a great character. Did he go too soon? Yeah, sad to see him go, but I think overall there are multiple reasons for Sukuna to kill Ishigori there. Up next, we've got, I don't know how the story could possibly be steered to a satisfying and compelling conclusion from where it is now. Regardless of how Sukuna gets taken out or who the next boss is, the story won't produce anything Shibuya level ever again. Much more excited to find out what Gege is going to be making after JJK is over. I disagree with that. I think that's a hot take for sure, but I don't agree with that. Specifically because, you know, the story won't produce anything Shibuya level ever again. I disagree with that entirely. While I think Shibuya Incident was one of the peaks of the series, I think the instances of the culling game that we got, the fights that we got in the culling game, I think are some of the best fights in the series. Yuta in Sendai Colony is one of the greatest fights of Jujutsu Kaisen history. Hikari versus Kashimo. Hikari as a character moves the masses. Hikari is one of the most popular characters in all of Jujutsu Kaisen right now. I love Kashimo as a character. Kashimo is an amazing character. Higuruma is an amazing character. Higuruma is fucking peak fiction. Reggie Star isn't among the greats, but I loved Reggie Star. I enjoyed Reggie Star and his dynamic with Megami. Takaba is an amazing character. There's so many awesome moments in the culling game in the latter half after Shibuya. Naoya, who we were just talking about as well. Naoya is an amazingly written character. I think it's a hot take, but not your best. The themes of Shibuya, curses versus humans, the cycle of violence, who deserves to be on top, were all fantastic. But in the current fight, I struggle to find the theme. And the one I see the most clearly is, I guess, individualism and selfishness versus community and selflessness. It just seems less focused to me. But I also tend to find Mahito to be a more compelling villain than Sukuna. And this is the main hot take that made me put this on there. A part of Jujutsu Kaisen's identity was lost when all of the disaster curses were written out of the story. And I think that's going to be our first spicy hot take for sure. Not only is that a hot take in general, I also can't disagree with you either. The disaster curses, and I don't mean that in a sense that I don't think the culling games and the dynamics of the story that are going on right now aren't good, right? I think why I agree and why I think this is spicy hot is because the disaster curses were very heavily entwined into the plot of Jujutsu Kaisen and Shibuya Incident as a whole. That's why people love Shibuya Incident so much, because it was the culmination of everything that we had built towards going forward. The culling game and everything going forward is still, you know, still harkens back to those original themes of the story, but ultimately the story has progressed into an entirely separate path, more human path, right? Less of a curse path, more of dealing in the sorcerer path. While the first half of the story, we invested very heavily into the idea of curses and cursed spirits as a whole, now we are expanding upon the idea of sorcerers and the dark side of sorcery and curse users, right? Can sorcerers become curses? Can humans become curses? We also have the idea of, as the person mentioned, we have the ideas of community and letting and building the next generation and building, not investing in yourself, but investing in the people around you, as opposed to the people, the villains that I've said time and time again, Kenjaku, Sukuna, even Tengen, you could say, that focus most of their life prolonging their time on this earth and doing what they want to do, as opposed to the Jujutsu High students that are fighting this battle for the people around them, for the world around them. They're sacrificing their lives for the world. What aspect have curse spirits or curses as a whole played in Jujutsu Kaisen since Shibuya incident? Sure, you have curses like Kurarushi, but other than that, curses really don't matter too much right now. Curses aren't a major aspect of the story. A lot of the major reasons people enjoyed Jujutsu Kaisen or even got into Jujutsu Kaisen in the first place was because of the curse aspect. The whole premise of cursed spirits, haunting, places like hospitals, schools where negative emotions are congregated and combined. You also have how curses wanted to be humans and wanted to replace humans. It is fundamentally something of Jujutsu Kaisen that we haven't seen touched on again. The dynamic that the disaster curses played with our main characters, as many people have mentioned in chat, Mahito versus Yuji. Mahito against Yuji is, no lie, still is a place in my heart as one of the best fights, one of the best dynamics in all of Jujutsu Kaisen. So like I can't disagree. Hidden Inventory over Shibuya. I think while Hidden Inventory is an amazing condensed story, and it does a lot of heavy lifting, I think Shibuya just has so much more. Shibuya just has so much into it, right? There's so many defining moments in the series, so many defining fights, and it's just it really is just everything that we've been building towards happening. You've got Sukuna versus Jogo, Sukuna versus Maharaga, the Dagon fight, Yuji versus Choso. You've got Gojo versus the Disaster Curses, Kenjaku and Yuki standoff. You have so many different things. The anime gave us Choso versus Kenjaku round 1. Shibuya has so many highs, and it's high all the way through. Once you get started, it's just mountainous. But Hidden Inventory is still really good. I don't want to deny that, but I think Shibuya definitely eclipses. The best battle in Jujutsu Kaisen is Takaba versus Kenjaku. Put that right in spicy hot. Put that right in spicy hot, because that is an insane take. I, as a Takaba fan, wouldn't even say that. That's crazy. That's insane. I didn't even know that you could string those words together in a sentence. Now let me get on my soapbox for a hot minute. I will say I love the Takaba versus Kenny fight. Takaba versus Kenny is one of my most guiltiest pleasures of all time. And I'm gonna go on a little defense moment right here for it. The reason why people don't like Takaba versus Kenny is because some of the jokes and some of the premise of the fight is lost in translation entirely. Just no way to save it, especially when we only have the Japanese to English translations and not like the anime people doing their best to trying to localize it for English audiences. Because if you don't have a grasp on Japanese comedy media, or just some of the niche things that gets done, and unless you're just able to appreciate the fact that Gege was able to put that much time and research and effort into making sure his characters were true to life, then you just frankly don't give a fuck, and it's just nothing to you. It's like, as people have said, it's a slog. But I did enjoy the fight. I don't think it's one of the worst fights. I definitely wouldn't say it's one of the best fights. But I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a spicy hot take to say it is the best fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, though. My hot take is that Mechamaru can defeat Sukuna right now if he was alive and in his giant robot form. Yeah, take your spicy hot take immediately. Mechamaru was like, what, temporary special grade? That was like the best he got when he fought Mahito. He couldn't even beat Mahito's domain expansion. What's he doing against Sakuna's open barrier domain expansion? I mean, what? This is just, listen, I know people liked Mechamaru. I even saw something that was saying that Mechamaru should have survived and would have been a great character to have in other arcs. And it's like, no, he would not have. I promise you, he would not have at all. Mechamaru served his purpose. The only reason people even like Mechamaru is because he died so early. If Mechamaru didn't die to Mahito, people would not like him as much. Mark my freaking words. I'm telling you right now. I don't think that's a hot take at all. Sukuna isn't the fraud. Gojo declared himself the honored one, while the narrator declared Sukuna the honored one. The bisected one insisted he would win, but we saw how that turned out. Sukuna destroys anything between him and his goals. He saw Gojo as an issue and removed him. People like to point out that Sukuna stole Megami's body and curse technique, and that he had Agito and Maharaga to help. But the truth is, he used knowledge of Jujutsu and personal power to acquire them. Not to mention, Gojo had 3 people help his initial attack. Damn, that's crazy. That's crazy. Gojo's not the... I want to put you in hot. Just based off of just off of the fact that you said Gojo declared himself the honored one and the narrator declared Sukuna the honored one. So that's how we know the true honored one. That is like insane to me. Like, I think that deserves hot take alone. Like, normally I would put this like mild lukewarm, like just classic Sukuna over Gojo shenanigans, but just that take alone blows my mind. The power system, despite being complex and interesting, is underutilized in the sense that a lot of characters are too weak, too dumb, or don't have the right mentality to explore its potential. This is why Gojo vs Sukuna was so fun, because they're the only ones who can capitalize on the potential. I think that's a pretty hot take in my honest opinion. That is honestly insane to me that you would say that the cursed energy or the cursed technique, the power system, is underutilized. If anything, I just feel like Gojo and Sukuna are exceptions, right? They are not the norm. Gojo and Sukuna are the exceptions. I think we have to stop remembering that, because the idea is, isn't that the truest statement of the word, is that the power system is solid and concrete, and the characters themselves, if they can't interact with the power system, then they're unable to use it? I feel like that makes the most sense. You know what I mean? I feel like that makes the most sense. Like, listen, if you're too dumb to figure out how binding vows work, then you don't get to use binding vows. Saying that the power system is underutilized is a little crazy. I feel like the power system has such a large part to play in a lot of the fights. That's why people hated Hikari, and people were saying that Hikari is too fucking waffling, and that's why people were saying that people don't read JJK, because JJK is too much about waffling, and people can't figure out what's going on, and people can't understand what's going on. I feel like the power system is overutilized in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's a pretty hot take. I don't think it's spicy hot, but I think that's a pretty hot take. Maybe mild. Megami is 80% responsible for all the shit that happens in Jujutsu Kaisen. The idiot lets Itadori eat the finger. If he had known his past and his family, Toji wouldn't have been a problem. He summons Maharaga in Shibuya. he becomes possessed by Sukuna and then doesn't want to be saved. Now that is the king of all spicy hot takes and is absolutely based literature right there. Based comment. So true. All right. Up next, Mahito should have been nerfed instead of just taken out of the story. How interesting would it have been to have him around or even change as a fundamental person by the end? Oof. That's a hot take, I think. That's a pretty hot take that Mahito should have survived and then just been nerfed. And then just been carried around by the group as like a side character and a new ally. Ain't no way. Kill Mahito. Mahito needed to die. In that, if Mahito was still alive after that, it would be such a that would be a waste of a potential. Like if Mahito lived to tell the tale after doing the deeds that he did in the Shibuya incident, fuck no. Mahito needed to die. That's a hot take for sure. Maki killing the entire Zenin clan is a complete waste of her arc to prove herself and stick it to the man. She just became a Toji clone instead of being her own character. I think it's a mild take, all things considered. I think the way we said it is pretty hot and pretty on the fire. I don't agree with it, but I'm willing to accept it as a take that Maki's arc is overshadowed by Toji. I'm willing to take that. But the way that it was said is so crazy. Maki's arc is not overshadowed by Toji, nor do I think Maki's arc is equivalent to Toji in any way possible. Maki is in a sense always going to be better than Toji because Maki actually did what Toji always could have. Toji and Maki, sure, are parallels of each other. They're mirror images of each other in the sense that you have a character like Toji who was rejected by the Zenin clan because he had no cursed energy. Maki was rejected by the Zenin clan because she had low cursed energy, but because she was a woman. And women aren't supposed to be Jujutsu sorcerers in the Zenin clan. They're meant to be fucking maids. And that's fucking crazy. The Zenin clan's just fucking chauvinistic, misogynistic. Sure, so you could say she stuck it to the man, but again, does that offend you? Does that bother you? That she killed, that she was able to, that Gege wanted to carve out time for his story to prove that Maki as a woman was able to surpass all of the Zenin clan on her own merit? Crazy. Maki did what Toji never could. What did Toji do? Toji said, fuck it, my family sucks. But you know what? I'll just live with it. Ranta even says the Zenin clan existed on Toji's merit. Toji let that shit continue. Maki burned that shit to the ground. Maki burned that shit to the ground, not because she's Toji and not because she had a heavenly restriction, but because the clan had done her and her sister so fucking dirty that she had to give them their comeuppance. Maki and Mai's disregard by the Zenin clan has nothing to do with Toji's disregard to the Zenin clan. Maki then kills Cursed Naoya, the vengeful spirit of that, when it becomes a fucking spirit. The misogyny missile got taken out. While I will say that Maki and Toji are a great duality, I feel like Maki as a character has definitely surpassed the Toji Maki equivalent. And I think it's a mild take because again, you can find it from any Twitter space. It's a very honestly a very lukewarm take if you really think about it. Last hot take of the tier list. Hikari is stronger than Yuta. Yuta said it himself, so there's no reason to assume anything else if Yuta himself said he's weaker. People also try to say all Yuta needs to do is destroy Hikari's brain to kill him in Jackpot, and while yes, that's a win con, it's also a win con for anybody versus anybody. If Hikari gets lucky, which we have pretty much always seen him do, he's pretty much guaranteed to do it with increased probability mode. He'll win either from outlasting Yuta till he runs out of cursed energy or just by killing him outright because he has better stats almost across the board while in Jackpot. This is the ice coldest take I've heard in my life. It's not hot. It's not hot. It's not hot to say Hikari beats Yuta. It is the most ice cold take because it's so wrong. And it's so spouted in the masses, in the community, that it is outright just misinformation at this point. Especially now that Yuta has his domain expansion. What's Hikari fucking doing? The thing is with Hikari, so many people scale Hikari jackpot right off the rip, which is just not the case. Hikari still needs to hit jackpot. Hikari will always need to hit jackpot. That will always be one of the biggest issues when it comes to Hikari fighting certain characters. It's one reason why Maki's got the biggest advantage over Hikari, not just besides the fact that Soul Split Katana basically outright null and voids his jackpot healing. Yuta's domain expansion, if casted before Hikari hits jackpot, just completely overrides or stops the sure hit effect and basically brings them into a domain tug of war, in which case you've got Yuta up against base Hikari, which I'm telling you, Yuta is winning that fight for sure, especially if Rika is in the domain expansion. If Hikari does hit jackpot, sure, he's got the awesome reverse curse technique automatic regeneration. Yuta has curse speech. Yuta has Rika to help. Yuta has precognition. Yuta has cleave. Yuta can then cast domain expansion while Hikari is in jackpot, so that way he doesn't have to worry, because there can be no domain tug of war when Hikari's in jackpot. Hikari can't cast domain expansion again while he's already in jackpot. Yuta's got 4 minutes and 11 seconds where Yuta can literally just domain expansion uncontested and fight in his domain expansion with all of his curse techniques. In fact, Yuta can use cleave as his sure hit effect and immediately eviscerate Hikari until it's over, until the jackpot is over. Or Jacob's Ladder, you could even argue, would completely extinguish jackpot, stop it, and completely open him up to a vulnerable attack by Yuta. It's just so ice cold that it just doesn't even hold up. And that's it, guys. That's all she wrote. That is the Jujutsu Kaisen hot take tier list.